Did you know that Psychic is the most common type for legendary and mythical Pokémon? It's kind of ironic, because the only thing legendary about it now is how much worse it's gotten over time. I've decided to embark on a journey to craft the perfect gym leader for every type in the game. I've been going type by type to build a full team of 6 Pokémon, with thought out movesets, abilities, items, and most importantly, an emphasis on representing that type as best as possible. Each type has certain traits that make it unique, and this series aims to both highlight those traits and utilize them to craft a high-level gym leader team. In the last video we covered the fighting type, and today we're using a calm mind to assess our next type, Psychic. Before we do, let's reflect on the rules. This team will not include legendaries, mythicals, ultra beasts, or paradox Pokemon, as gym leaders don't really use these guys. I'm also excluding all 4 generational gimmicks as I've done so far, so no Ice Cream Alakazam meme today. And third, I'm not repeating Pokemon between teams, for both variety and continuity with my previous videos. As for what can be included, basically everything else. Pokemon can have any of their moves, including level up, TMs, egg moves, and even ones removed prior to Gen 9. They can also have any of their abilities and any held item. Finally, this series has 2 goals: build a diverse and well-balanced monotype team, and build a team that represents its type as best as possible. With all that covered, let's talk about the Psychic type. Once the most powerful type in the entire game, the inevitable balancing and power creep of following generations puts Psychic in a less than favorable position. The best way to show this is through the type chart. Offensively, Psychic is good against fighting and poison, it's not very effective on itself and steel, and it can't hit dark. Both types added in Gen 2 made Psychic notably worse, which was necessary considering that the only type that could defend against Psychic in Gen 1 was Psychic. Switching over to the defensive end, Psychic is weak to Bug, Dark, and Ghost, and resists fighting in Psychic. Thanks to what was likely a programming bug, Ghost couldn't hit Psychic in Gen 1, which made Bug its only weakness. Oh, so that's why they called it a bug in the program. One of my favorite fun facts about the Psychic type is that its weaknesses are directly translated from human fears. People are afraid of bugs, people are afraid of the dark, and people are afraid of ghosts. That said, I think a lot of people are also afraid of getting struck by lightning, drowning, and being lit on fire, but I digress. And when you look at Psychic's 3 weaknesses, they're leaps and bounds ahead of where they were upon introduction, thanks to the physical special split, new moves, and again, power creep in general. Now, I know I've been pretty negative regarding Psychic's spot in the type chart, but it does have one big thing going for it. It doesn't interact with a majority of types. Sure, that may not be as helpful as hitting a ton of things for super effective, but without many things there to counter it, if it can overcome those few challenges, Psychic Pokemon can really tear through a team. The type's main way of accomplishing this is with its high-ranking special attack stat, because surprise surprise, most Psychic types aren't out here throwing hands. Unfortunately, this is Psychic's only notable stat, as everything else is either average or underwhelming. And while that does suck a bit, I think it makes perfect sense. As opposed to a type like Fire, which has a single strategy in the Psychic type utilizes a variety of tricks and tools to help itself deal with the opposition. It's kind of like a brains over brawn approach. Instead of brute force, the strategy is, well, strategy, as over half the Psychic type moves in existence are status moves. Setup, healing, screens, tricks, skill swapping, power swapping, guard swapping, speed swapping, heart swapping, not to mention a bunch of bizarre rooms, Psychic has a ridiculous array of support moves to improve its position in battle. And I think this foils some of our previous types like Bug and Poison quite nicely. These two exhibit a host of tricks to cripple the opponent, whereas Psychic employs a list of skills to aid itself. And sure, maybe a few of these strategies aren't really worth the trouble, but that doesn't change the fact that Psychic is one of the most strategic and creative types out there. The only downside to this is that many Psychic types run into the issue called 4 move slot syndrome. Between having a stab move, coverage to make sure you aren't walled by dark types, not to mention setup, healing, and any of those other support moves, many Psychic types require you to make a judgment call on what moves are most needed. Or to look at it another way, what vulnerabilities you're willing to deal with, which I'll get more into as we talk about the team. Speaking of which, I feel confident that this is and will be the weirdest looking team of the entire series, just trust the process. Normally this is where I'd talk about the gym leader themselves, specifically their traits, strategy, and overall personality. But you know, I think that info is best saved for later. As for right now, you should subscribe. My dog and I would both appreciate it. Now let's all get psyched for our first team member, the emotion Pokemon, Indeedi. Female Indeedi to be exact. While this bear, panda, rabbit thing may not be the most impressive psychic type out there, it does bring one very important thing to the table, its ability Psychic Surge, which sets Psychic Terrain the moment it hits the field. Psychic Terrain has two simple effects. It buffs the power of psychic moves by 30% and prevents the use of priority moves like Sucker Punch or Shadow Sneak. Having Indeedi automatically set terrain will help our team showcase its best trait of special offense by giving us that extra oomph psychic types usually need due to their lack of super effective hits. And Indeedi can help get those harder hitters on the field with its first move, Baton Pass. This is actually why we're using female Indeedi, as male Indeedis don't get Baton Pass. It's taking every ounce of strength I have to say Indeedi and not King DDD! While going with female Indeedi does mean we have slightly worse offensive stats, it doesn't matter too much given its role on the team. As for the rest of our moveset, we could sport some support, but I don't want it to be too passive, so we'll give it some options for offense. The first one being Expanding Force, which is 50% stronger when in Psychic Terrain. Next would be Hyper Voice for dual stab, followed by Mystical Fire to help cover steel types, and weaken any opposing special attackers. But again, I think Indeedi's best strat initially is to switch with Baton Pass to get a stronger Pokemon in. Plus, if it switches out early, it can always come back and reset the terrain later. Thankfully, with the item Terrain Extender to boost terrain from 5 to 8 turns, it won't need to do that too often. The last point in Indeedi's column is actually its secondary type of Normal, as it gives us an immunity to Ghost, which we also could have had with Farigiraf, but I used it on the normal team, so RIG, rest in giraffe. Okay, I know I'm going to lose a couple of you here, but if you would just bear with me, I promise you I'll make this make sense. Next up is the constraint Pokemon, Meowstic, this time male. Now I know it's a bit wild for me to put one of the worst Gen 6 Pokemon on a perfect gym leader team, but I needed a Pokemon to fill a role, and out of all our options, I think Meowstic does the best job. The role in question being Screens. One of many strategies the type has at its disposal, Reflect and Light Screen are a common pairing meant to boost a team's defensive prowess, which is very helpful for the less than defensively stellar Psychic type. And just like Indeedi with the Terrain Extender, with the Light Clay in hand, Meowstic can extend those screens to 8 turns. Plus, with its ability Prankster to give its status moves priority, it's near guaranteed to get both screens off. Thank goodness Psychic Terrain doesn't stop all priority moves. The only problem with running Reflect and Light Screen is that you're halfway through your moveset, which for some of the more powerful Psychic Pokemon feels like a bit of a waste, as you can always argue those move slots are better spent on extra coverage or another setup move. But with Meowstic, one look at its stats tells us we're not missing out on anything better. And we have one of the most efficient and reliable screen setters. That said, its third move is also going to be Baton Pass because we really don't want this thing staying on the field longer than it needs to. And finally, it'll have Expanding Force as its only attack. Dark types of course wall this set, so maybe you'd want to swap out Baton Pass for something like Alluring Voice, but attacking is more of a last-ditch effort for this scaredy cat. Even Smoochum hits harder. I know that with Indeedi first, and now this thing on the team, I'm not instilling a ton of confidence, but I wanted to showcase the setup that a truly optimized Psychic team is capable of. There's a lot of tools at their disposal, and even more I'm foregoing due to having only 24 moves on the whole team, but now that we've set the stage, it's time to get into the true powerhouses that'll carry this team. Now that we're pivoting to offense, it's important to have team members that can combat the Psychic type's biggest weakness in Dark, which is why our next team member is the Embrace Pokemon, Gardevoir.
It's a Gardevoir, mon ami.
A mon that needs no introduction, Gardevoir has always been an exemplary Psychic type user, with a stat spread that almost perfectly matches the type's stat rankings. And it only got better when it gained the Fairy type in Gen 6, giving it a massive leg up against Dark types, both offensively and defensively. And while Gardevoir has access to a ton of useful support moves to improve its defensive utility in battle, our Gardevoir is going full offense, with the item Choice Specs. Keep in mind, a lot of Psychic Pokemon can fulfill the exact same role, so to avoid half the team being Calm Mind setup, some entries might pass up their best set to give the team the variety it needs. As for moves on our Specs Gardevoir, first up is Expanding Force, as it should have no problem getting on the field fast enough to make use of the terrain. Second would be Moonblast for dual stab, and more importantly, a great answer for Dark types. Third would be Mystical Fire, which is now really nice for Steel types since Gardevoir is weak to them. That said, Aura Sphere can do the same thing, plus it's just cool that Gardevoir now gets access to Aura Sphere. As for the last move, you could either go with another attack like Shadow Ball to hit Ghost and opposing Psychic types, or you could throw out the move Trick to get rid of your Choice Specs and potentially cripple the opponent. Between the two, I'd go with Trick, as Expanding Force under terrain should be plenty for combating Ghost types. At least most of them. It doesn't really matter which ability you choose, and while Trace could be very handy in specific scenarios, I think Synchronize is fine to pass along any potential status that comes your way. Like I said, Gardevoir is an exemplary Psychic type, and giving it choice specs is a great way to add some powerful offense to the team. No Psychic team would be complete without a Calm Mind user, and I think our best pick for that role is the Sun Pokemon, Espeon. For those who know me, this might seem like a biased pick, but Espeon has a lot going in its favor. For starters, it's one of the strongest and fastest Psychic types this team could have, with very few at or around its level. The more important of the two is speed, as we're obviously going to boost our offense with the move Calm Mind. While defensive users are typically better for Calm Mind, Espeon can quickly start one-shotting things after a couple uses, and thanks to having speed on its side, from there it could just sweep through a team. To do that, its first attack will be Psychic. This could easily be Expanding Force as well, but the further we go into the team, the better it is to not rely on terrain being up. That said, keep in mind for the rest of the video that Psychic and Expanding Force are pretty interchangeable on movesets. Next would be Shadow Ball, which is partially the reason Gardevoir doesn't need it over Mystical Fire, because sadly, the Sun Pokemon gets no fire moves, aside from Sunny Day. Last on the moveset, and a big reason for Espeon being great in this role, is Draining Kiss. While a bit on the weaker side, Draining Kiss recovers 75% of the damage dealt, which after a couple Calm Minds is basically like attacking and using Recover in the same turn. While Alakazam could be great for Calm Mind, Espeon's fairly reliable recovery gives it a better chance to stay in the fight, without getting rid of coverage for Recover like Zam would have to. Not to mention, its ability Magic Bounce is incredibly helpful, as it blocks and bounces back certain status moves on the user, so nothing from Thunder Wave to Taunt to Toxic Spikes is getting through this pink cat. Yes, pink, not purple. Fight me. While Espeon does have to worry about its low defenses, we can give it a Colbur Berry to have damage from a super effective Dark attack. You could argue for either Life Orb or Leftovers, but it doesn't really need them, and surviving a strong Dark hit just to Draining Kiss back the damage is something I find hilarious. Almost every Psychic type has good potential as a Calm Mind user, but between its stats, moves, and incredible ability, Espeon is our top dog. Cat. Thing. See you later, old friend. While Psychic is a specially oriented type, for the sake of balance, I'm going to include one physical attacker. And after careful consideration, I think the best pick for this role is the Blade Pokemon, Gallade. I know, it seems like a meme to have both Gallade and Gardevoir on the same team, but there are only so many good physical Psychic types. There was only one other option I considered for this spot, who I'll touch on more in a bit, but ultimately, Gallade's kit is much better suited for this team's needs. As a fighting type, Gallade is an amazing answer for the dark types that threaten our team, and the steel types that would try to wall it. Plus, fighting resists bug, so that means a weaker first impression. Psych! The terrain was still up, you idiot! One of the best things in Gallade's arsenal is its newly acquired ability, Sharpness, which gives a 50% boost to all of its slicing moves. Gallade already had a pretty solid attack stat, but that significant of a power jump, that ends up applying to almost every attack it wants to use, has made it so much more threatening in Scarlet and Violet. And as for those attacks it wants to use, our first one is Psycho Cut, which after the Sharpness boost has over 100 base power, and a high crit chance. Next is Sacred Sword, which again thanks to our ability, actually hits harder than close combat. Third is Night Slash, which helps against Ghost and opposing Psychic types. Lastly, while other slicing moves like Leaf Blade, Aqua Cutter, or X Scissor could be helpful, with the offensive set we're building, I think Agility is our best final pick. Gallade really isn't that fast, but with one agility he can pretty much outspeed everything and hit extremely hard, as our coverage hits a majority of mons for super effective damage. And with a Life Orb in hand, we'll be making full use of its offensive prowess. It's probably the most standard Gallade set out there, but it is exactly what this team needs. After our two support options, we included a powerful Specs user and a Calm Mind setup user, and now with Agility Gallade, we have something that can set up to outspeed and punch holes in the opponent. I mean, slice holes, of course. While I'm the first to admit this team just looks funky, in terms of representing the spectrum of Psychic types, I feel like it's pretty spot on. Sure, there are many other Psychic strategies out there, but I feel like we covered the most prevalent ones, so now we're left with how to wrap things up. And one great option to do so is this honorable mention, Alakazam. I've already alluded to Sir Spoonalot's amazing offensive prowess when talking about Espeon, as it's the only Psychic type this team could have that's both stronger and faster than the Evolution. Plus it gets the incredible setup move Nasty Plot, which along with moves like Psychic for powerful stab, Shadow Ball for coverage, and Dazzling Gleam for more coverage, would make for a threatening final team member. Plus, we can give it a focus sash so it's guaranteed to live a single hit, which would stay intact thanks to its ability Magic Guard. This is a perfect last team member. There's no reason the gym leader shouldn't have this, and if you want to ignore what I'm about to say and jam with Alakazam, then wham bam thank you ma'am. But on that note, I think I have found the most amazing Pokemon to finish off this team. Some of you may not like it, but for those that do, you're welcome. My last pick for the team is the Avianoid Pokemon, Sigilyph. I'm not going to waste any time. The full moveset is Cosmic Power, Stored Power, Roost, and Psycho Shift, with Magic Guard as the ability, holding a Toxic Orb. Sigilyph is literally the only Pokemon that can run this particular set, and holy shit does it run it well. If you're unfamiliar with this dastardly set, the general premise is for Sigilyph to boost up its defenses with Cosmic Power, use those buffs to beef up Stored Power so it hits harder and harder, and heal off any damage taken with Roost. Just this setup alone is enough to make people rage, and it's a strategy that several Pokemon make good use of, most notably Deoxys Defense or Necrozma. But Sigilyph takes this great setup and nearly perfects it thanks to the last 3 puzzle pieces. The first of which is Magic Guard, which as we established with Alakazam, only allows direct attacks to hurt Sigilyph. So no Leech Seed, no hazard damage, and importantly for us, no poison damage. Enter puzzle piece 2, the Toxic Orb. Normally only seen on Pokemon like Gliscor or Zangoose, who have abilities that specifically require them to be poisoned, Sigilyph's use of the Toxic Orb actually serves as a form of offense, thanks to puzzle piece number 3, Psycho Shift, which simply transfers the user's status ailment to the target. With this setup, Sigilyph can transfer Toxic onto the opponent at any point as many times as it wants. It can Toxic Stall Dark types that aren't hit by Stored Power, it'll never take poison damage thanks to Magic Guard, it can never be paralyzed or put to sleep thanks to it always having a status. It's quite literally the most obnoxious set possible for Sigilyph, which makes it perfect as our last team member. Sure, Alakazam would be great for raw offense, but for a team that's supposed to represent brains over brawn, what better of a final challenge than something seemingly impossible to take down once it gets rolling? Like I said toward the beginning, Psychic employs a list of skills to aid itself, and what better way to represent that than taking a fairly average Psychic-Mon and using the best strategy at its disposal to make it a monster. So, now that the team is done, I'm sensing a lot of you aren't quite stoked about the end result. Maybe you feel Amon got overlooked, maybe you don't love all the movesets, or maybe you've been screaming about Trick Room for nearly 20 minutes. And you know what? After careful thought, there's so much more to the Psychic type than what I fit into this one team, which is why our gym leader was never really a gym leader. After your battle, a second gym leader emerges from the shadows, and in true Claire fashion, our duo of gym leaders reject your first victory, and instead challenge you to the ultimate test of Psychic skill, a double battle. It felt thematic for Psychic to showcase a doubles team, but I didn't want it to only be a doubles team, as many of the type's strategies are primarily useful in singles, like Calm Mind or Cosmic Power, and others are much better in doubles. Plus, this means I get to show off more Pokemon, so everybody wins. That said, our first team member is actually going to be the same, Indeedi. I've already mentioned how good Psychic Terrain is, and it's even better in doubles, since more Mons can make use of it, and since double battles typically take less turns, making the terrain even longer by proxy. On that note, I still think Terrain Extender is great for an item, since the battle takes place with a 6 Pokemon team, not the standard 4 you'd see in VGC. Speaking of which, keep in mind this isn't a VGC team, it's doubles. I know the two have become synonymous in the minds of many, but this is simply a doubles team meant to showcase the Psychic type, so don't expect everything to have Protect, okay? As for this Indeedi's moves, it'll still have Expanding Force for stab, and it'll have Dazzling Gleam for coverage on dark types. Third is going to be Follow Me, which will be instrumental in guaranteeing our next team member pulls off their intended strat. And just like Baton Pass, it's still exclusive to only females. Lastly, I think Helping Hand is a solid final move. Indeedi's only job is to set the terrain, and once it does, it isn't as necessary to keep around, so might as well give it away to help its teammate. And as for who that teammate is, next up is the silent Pokemon, Hatterene. A Psychic Fairy type just like Gardevoir, Hatterene helps out a ton with dark types, both offensively with its amazing special attack, and defensively with its fairly solid bulk. The only downside is Hatterene's abysmal speed, but for this team, that's exactly what we want. Enter Trick Room. One of the most notorious Psychic strats, Trick Room reverses turn order for 5 turns, making slower Pokemon move first. While it can work in singles, just like Psychic Terrain, it's much better in doubles, since it affects twice as many Pokemon. And thanks to Indeedi taking the heat on turn 1 with Follow Me, Hatterene is nearly guaranteed to set it up. And once it does, it can use Expanding Force to hit hard in terrain, Draining Kiss to heal itself, and Mystical Fire to hit steel types. While Dazzling Gleam might be better since it hits both Mons, with Hatterene holding a Life Orb to dish out even more damage, Draining Kiss can keep us healthy as we get whittled down by recoil. Between its typing, offensive prowess, and terrible speed, which is a positive this time, it's easily one of the best Trick Room leads this team could have. Next up is the physical attacker that almost made it onto the singles team over Gallade, the Iron Leg Pokemon, Metagross. One of the main factors for putting Metagross on the doubles team is its stats. It's a tad slower, which is better for Trick Room, and it has more bulk, which is pretty useful in doubles, since you might end up taking 2 hits in a single turn. Not to mention, for a Psychic team specifically, Metagross's Steel typing isn't as useful as Gallade's Fighting typing. But that all said, Metagross is still a goddamn pseudo-legendary, so no matter where you put it, it'll do just fine. And just like Gallade, as the double team's only physical attacker, we're going full offense, with our first move being Psychic Fangs. Not only is it stronger and more accurate than Zen Headbutt, it can also get rid of the opponent's screens, which can be really annoying to deal with in doubles. Second is Iron Head. While Heavy Slam is a great option as well, it's kind of hard to pass up the ability to flinch the opponent. Third is Hammer Arm, helping against Dark and Steel types, and lowering our speed even more for Trick Room. And finally, Shadow Claw is the best way to round out our coverage. Metagross is one of those Pokemon with ridiculous move variety, so there are likely several great alternatives, but this moveset covers the essentials while also hitting 60% of Mons for super effective. For an ability, Clear Body is the best pick, preventing any stat drops from the opponent. And as for an item, Assault Vest would be good to give Metagross some extra bulk, but since it already has decent bulk, I think Weakness Policy would be a really fun choice. Nothing like a +2 Metagross under Trick Room to make your opponent start sweating bullets. Bullet punches. Oh shit, I forgot about terrain again. As I mentioned a second ago, screens can be really annoying to deal with in doubles, which is exactly why we're using them again. Only this time, we're trading out the Forgotten About Cat for the Forgotten About Bug, the rolling Pokemon, Rabsca. While most people know this Mon is one of the 2 Revival Blessing users, it actually has a lot more going for it than that one gimmick. Its stat spread is pretty solid, with respectable defenses, a special attack stat that outshines Delphox and Latios, and a speed stat that's perfect for Trick Room. Plus, as a bug, it has super effective stab for Dark types and Psychic types. Of course, we already know half its moveset, with Reflect to boost the team's defense and Light Screen to boost the team's special defense. Third is Bug Buzz because of what I said literally 10 seconds ago, in case your brain rot runs really deep. And lastly, of course, Expanding Force. You could squeeze in Revival Blessing if you really wanted to, but with Rabsca holding a Light Clay to extend screen turns, we wouldn't be able to pull the Lepaberry strat like we did with Pawmot on the fighting team. But that's fine, because this moveset, along with Synchronizes the ability, gives us a great screen setter that can start dishing out damage after it's done setting up. It might even be better to bring this out before Metagross, as the screens would give it a better chance of surviving a super effective hit to activate Weakness Policy. I don't think Rabsca's anything incredible, but as a screen setter, it plays an effective role for our doubles team. Next up is a Pokemon I knew I wanted to include on the doubles team, despite having no idea what it should do. The Goth Mommy Pokemon, wait, what? The Astral Body Pokemon, Gothitelle. While Goth's abilities Frisk and Competitive are both great in their own right, its main claim to fame is its hidden ability, Shadow Tag. Preventing your opponent from switching out can really screw up their strategy, especially in doubles. As for what it does once it hits the field, great question. Gothitelle tends to run a lot of support in VGC, like Fake Out, Taunt, and Helping Hand, just to name a few. And while I do want ours to have support potential, I don't want it to be too passive, which is a bold claim considering this was on the singles team, but I digress. Its first move is going to be Psychic, although you could trade that out for Psychic Noise to prevent the target from healing. Gothitelle is actually tied for being the weakest team member alongside Indeedi, so trading out a bit of base power for utility could be worth it. Second is Foul Play, which could really mess up the physical attackers our Psychic types are more scared of. Third is Heal Pulse, to keep our more offensive teammates healthy. And finally, Trick Room, just in case we need it. Ironically, our last team member doesn't want to be in Trick Room, but depending on how the battle shakes out, it could help to have an extra user. As for an item, I think Leftovers are fine, but you could easily give it a Citrus Berry, Covert Cloak, or Mental Herb instead. It's kind of funny to me that Gothitelle is infamous for having Shadow Tag, which pairs really well with a lot of Pokemon. But for this team in particular, Shadow Tag is pretty much summed up by cool. Anyways, our final doubles team member is probably the last Pokemon you expected to see on a Trick Room team, being the Ostrich Pokemon, Espathra. Normally, putting a Speed Boost user on a Trick Room team is cause for a psych evaluation, but the goal is to keep it in the back until the very end. Imagine getting past most of a tough Trick Room team to then have a 6-foot-tall ostrich with a bob haircut running circles around you at 120 miles per hour. Oh, sorry, non-Americans. Over 190 kilometers per hour. It's already pretty fast on its own with 105 speed, but with Speed Boost it really hits the ground running. I mentioned toward the start that a lot of psychic types can have 4 move slot syndrome, and Espathra probably represents that better than anyone. TLDR, between Protect, Calm Mind, Stored Power, Roost, Lumina Crash, Shadow Ball, and Dazzling Gleam, there's no feasible way to build a perfect Espathra. No matter what combination you put together, it'll always be wanting for one of the moves that it left behind. That's actually why it wasn't our Calm Mind user over Espeon, or our Stored Power user over Sigilif. But in doubles, it doesn't really want to run that move set. So instead, it'll have Protect to guarantee a turn of Speed Boost, and to potentially stall out an extra turn of Trick Room if need be, Lumina Crash, which is guaranteed to lower the target's special defense by 2 stages, which would benefit almost every member of the team, Dazzling Gleam to hit dark types, and Shadow Ball for some final coverage. Instead of Espathra trying to do everything itself, it instead can spam Lumina Crash to lower the foe's special defense, giving its field partner a good chance to KO them with their attack. Finally, with a Focus Sash in hand, wait, my bad. With a Focus Sash on wing, it can make up for its lackluster defenses, and maybe even make the difference between losing and winning on 1 HP with 1 Pokemon left. So there you have it, 2 teams for the price of 1 this time. What do you think about both teams? Which one do you like more? And are you upset that despite having over 11 different Pokemon on these teams, plus an honorable mention, I didn't mention Reuniclus even once? If so, fair. Let me know all your feedback in the comments. And for those of you wondering, don't worry, this won't be the only doubles team you'll see in this series. But on that note, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out the other gym leader videos if you haven't already, and as thanks for making it to the end of the video, here's a picture of my dog. Talk to y'all soon.